The Force Awakens is the first Star Wars movie not to have any input from George Lucas because he sold it to Disney, and such, this is Disney's first attempt in making a Star Wars movie. Now, I said before how I grew up with the prequel trilogy, and I was in denial of how bad it was because I was young and I didn't know any better. With the sequel trilogy though, I grew up with it as well, but in a different section of my life, and at a point where I could be more attentive to the details that were missing or that didn't make sense. Force Awakens less so than The Last Jedi and Rise of Skywalker however, because I was only 14 when this movie came out, but still I could see the good from the bad. Now I'm not going to delve too deep into what happens in the story, because if you've seen it you know it's basically a retread of A New Hope. You have the new Empire call the First Order to attack a village and try and get a map that leads to Luke Skywalker, who for some reason has disappeared. Poe Dameron then gives it to a droid called BB-8 and he meets a scavenger called Rey. On a Star Destroyer, a Stormtrooper known as FN-2187, who will later be renamed as Finn by Poe, helps Poe escape, and Poe heads back to the sand planet of Jakku to find BB-8. Finn then meets up with Rey and they escape the First Order on the Falcon. They then stumble on a ship Harrier that is piloted by Han Solo and Chewbacca, and after a series of events they board the Falcon and head for a planet called Takodana, where they meet a character called Maz Kanata who has Luke's lightsaber from the original trilogy. Rey then gets captured by the First Order leader Kylo Ren and she is interrogated, and we find out that she can resist Kylo's mind trick, which means she is strong with the Force. Kylo's master Snoke tells him to bring Rey to her, but she escapes and finds Finn, Han and Chewbacca who have come to rescue her. The rest of the movie goes on like you would expect it to in A New Hope, with the Death Star weapon about to fire and a race against time to destroy it before it destroys the Resistance base. Now, considering this movie is a complete retread of A New Hope, I think there are some ways that it is done better than the original New Hope. Now let me explain. As I said in my New Hope review, there's a lot of things that don't make sense, and if you delve deep into them, they may have more of a different meaning than what the creators wanted you to think, and sometimes the voice acting could be a little wooden and the story itself had a lot of problems. But in this one, while there are a lot of problems, a lot of the issues found in A New Hope are not there in A Force Awakens. It's like someone got the base story and remade it and fixed the problems that it had, and the people are going to either love that or hate it. Me personally, I like to see a different point of view. I like to see what would happen if issues with something would be fixed and done again, and seeing what it would look like. Now, there are some dumb things in this movie, and things that don't make sense, yes of course there are, but it's a trend in Star Wars, and it's sci-fi, so it really doesn't need to make total sense. And I want to highlight the Raze Mary Sue issue. If you don't know what that means, basically it's the idea that a character is overly powerful, without any explanation as to why they have that power. First of all, I don't 100% believe this. I can see where people are coming from, but I don't see why they're taking it so seriously as they are. Some parts where she uses the Force mind trick on the Stormtrooper is dumb. Although it's known that in Star Wars that Force sensitives are strong with certain aspects of the Force, whether it be pull, push or something else. However, having a mind trick being one of those is a little bit goofy and silly, but I let it go because there's a lot of other things in Star Wars that don't make sense, and this is light-hearted in comparison. Another note is that people say, why could she use a lightsaber without any training? Yet people forget, she has a staff on Jakku, and judging by how she uses it, she must have got into some scraps with it maybe against like a swordsman in the past or something on Jakku. Considering it is a scummy, Tatooine environment, there must have been some instances where she got into a fight with that staff. So I can look past that because there's an explanation there, albeit subtle. And this movie is by far the most visual I've seen so far, and I think we will see in a while. The darkness, the colours, the cinematography, it's all amazing. The actors do a really good job as well. Adam Driver is an excellent choice for Kylo Ren. He plays a conflicted character being pulled by both the light side and the dark side, while knowing which side he should choose, but not knowing which side he will choose. Daisy Ridley's Rey is also really good. Her energy when she's running around after Finn or when she's being tortured by Kylo Ren, it shines like a beacon, and I haven't seen quality in acting like that in Star Wars since I finished watching the Clone Wars. Now, although this movie is a rehash of A New Hope, there are a lot of things in this movie that are different, like the fact that Han and Leia are now no longer together. This was one of the first things that people complained about in this movie because it broke up the happily ever after of the last one. But for me, I like to see what happens when things don't work out. If they stayed together, it would have been too predictable. and I'd like to see things go a different way. And what happens when things like Ben Solo returning to the dark side and forcing Luke into exile would have an effect on their relationship. Now, I'm going to talk about the one thing that does happen in this movie that a lot of people don't like, and that's the fact that Han Solo died at the hands of Kylo Ren. People went mad at this, saying, how could they kill Han Solo? Star Wars is ruined. How could they do this to him? But the truth is, if you look into it, Harrison Ford wanted Han Solo to die at the end of Return of the Jedi. If you look into it closely, he actually wanted Han Solo to die when he was frozen in carbonite, but George didn't think it was right for the story. Harrison Ford was then paid a 7-figure salary to act as Han Solo again in this movie, on the one condition that he was killed off, and somehow people are hating on Disney for that when it wasn't their decision to begin with. So overall, I like this movie. Yes, it's a retread of A New Hope, but it's done in a way that, in some ways it's better than the original. And yes, it does have things that don't make sense, but it's Star Wars and it does that. But little did everyone know in the future, they held what many fans would love and what many fans would hate.